Hello, future doctors. Welcome back to Best Medicine's GCSE AQA lecture series for the subject biology. Today we'll be talking about the human eye. The human eye is a very complicated concept. It's a very difficult subject. Usually students find it difficult, so we have made a separate video for this. The human eye essentially looks like this on the front, from the front, right, as we're all aware. And when you look at it from the side, right, if you cut it open, it kind of looks like this. So to be able to understand the function of the human eye in detail as to how it works, we need to be able to study all the structures inside of it. Remember, the function of the human eye is to be able to help us see, right? Generate electrical impulses upon visual stimulus, right? Visual changes. For example, if we're looking at a football, looking at a car, our eye is able to generate all of these electrical impulses that will then be carried by sensory neurons to the CNS, right? And then there would be a synapse that would occur between the sensory neuron and the CNS's relay neuron to be able to interpret and understand what we're seeing. So that is the function of the human eye. The human eye's layer that is light sensitive, I want to talk about this first, is called the retina, okay? We want to focus as much light as we can sharply onto the retina. So the retina is around here, okay? This right here is the retina. So the retina is the light sensitive layer because it contains visual receptors. The visual receptors of the eyes are called rods and cones, okay? Rods, they help us see black and white, while cones, they help us see color. And both of these receptors are present on the retina, and each of these receptors is linked by a sensory neuron, which is going to take that electrical impulse generated by these receptors to the CNS. Okay? So the entire purpose is to be able to see an object. Let's see, here's an arrow, right? We want to see this arrow. So light coming from this arrow, we want to be able to focus this sharply onto the retina, kind of like this, okay? Perfectly sharply onto the retina. That is the entire point of the rest of the structures of the eye, okay? So the first structure of the eye that we're going to do as light comes in and strikes, the first structure that it strikes is a cornea. So what is a cornea? Cornea is a transparent membrane that allows the refraction, a little bit of bending of light as it enters the eye, okay? So cornea is a transparent layer that helps focus light onto the retina by refracting it. And if you don't know what refraction is, then you can contact us in the WhatsApp link provided below, and we can book a lesson on it, okay? So cornea is a thin, transparent layer that helps focus light onto the retina by refraction. So after light goes past the cornea, it passes through this fluid space, which we don't need to know for the sake of GCSEs, but then it goes through this little hole that allows the light to enter finally into the eyeball. This hole here, right, is called the pupil. If you ever look closely into the eyes of a person, you see a little black colored dot, right? That is the pupil. That is a hole that allows light to go through into the eye. Now the size of the pupil can be controlled. It can either be increased, dilated, or it can be constricted. Why would we want to dilate the pupil? Why would we want to constrict the pupil? Well, the answer to this is because at different instances, there's different amounts of light that is available in our surroundings, right? Sometimes we're in a brightly lit room. Sometimes we enter into a dark room. Maybe we go into a cave, or we're walking alone at night, right? And there's not much light available. So brightly lit situations, you would want to constrict the pupil because there is a lot of light available, right? Abundant light available to be able to be focused onto the retina. But when you're in a dimly lit place, Then you would want to dilate the pupil so that you can collect more light into the eye. So what is able to do this? What is able to constrict and dilate the pupil? The answer to this are these muscles that are attached to the pupil. Okay? These muscles are part of a structure called the iris. The iris essentially is a set of muscles that control the diameter of the pupil. The iris consists of two kinds of muscles, circular and radial muscles. Just like we had, remember, in the esophagus a little bit for peristalsis. Over here, there's no peristalsis, but we do have these involuntary, automatic, circular and radial muscles that help control the diameter of the pupil. The iris itself is the colored part of the eye, right? Whenever we see someone and we say, okay, this person has brown eyes, this person has blue eyes, and rarely some people even have green eyes, right? The colored part that gives them the color of brown or blue or green is actually the iris. So iris essentially is the muscle layer that controls the diameter of the pupil. So after passing the pupil, light is going to strike the lens. What does the lens do? Now, the entire purpose of the lens is to be able to accommodate for different objects at different lengths. For example, you could have an arrow that is very close to you, and so that the light rays that are coming from that arrow are coming at a different angle than the light rays that are coming from the faraway arrow. And so you want to be able to have a different refractive power for each of those arrows, right? For the faraway one, whose light rays are coming slightly straighter, you want to have lesser refraction inwards as compared to the arrow that is closer to the eye. Then you want to have a greater refractive power so that you're able to focus the light onto the retina perfectly. So to be able to change the refractive power from object to object, that is called accommodation. Okay, accommodation. So lens helps in accommodation to accommodate for vision for different objects at different length. Okay, so more on this later. Now, the way lens is able to function is because it is controlled by some muscles, and those muscles are called ciliary muscles. Okay, ciliary muscles. So right here is a ciliary muscle. The ciliary muscles are attached to the lens by these ligaments, and these are called suspensory ligaments. Now, the ciliary muscles are very weird. Why? Because they go beyond the normal human logic. Let me tell you how. Normally, when you look at this diagram, you would assume that the ciliary muscles, when they contract, they will pull the lens outwards, right? Making it more flatter. However, the ciliary muscles do the opposite of that. What they're able to do instead is that when they contract inwards, right? These are specially designed muscles that actually contract inwards. And when they contract inwards, you would assume that the tension on the suspensory ligament would decrease. Would decrease. And the lens will become more ball-like, right? More ball-like. And the vice versa will also be true. So if you relax the ciliary muscles, then they will come back, right? Then they will be pulled back. And when they are pulled back, then the tension on the suspensory ligaments will increase, pulling the lens and making it flatter. Okay? So that is how the ciliary muscles would control the diameter of the lens, the thickness of the lens, and therefore influencing its refractive power. So all of that is present in your neat notes, so let's have a look. So number one, we see the cornea, right? The cornea is the transparent front layer that helps focus light onto the retina by refracting it. Number two, we have the pupil. So the pupil is an opening in the center of the iris that regulates the amount of light entering the eye, right? Iris is the colored part of the eye that contains circular and radial muscles. And so these are able to help dilate or constrict the pupil depending on the light availability. And we'll do more on this later in a bit. Lens. Lens is a transparent structure that changes the shape to focus light onto the retina, and that is called accommodation. and it is conducted by the help of ciliary muscles and suspensory ligaments, okay? Retina, the light-sensitive layer. This is able to convert light onto electrical signals. It contains cells called rods for black and white light and cones for colored light. Now here's the thing. Each of those rods and cones, and maybe we can remove this and change the color here. So let's say here's the retina, and these are cells that are visually sensitive, right? So here's cells that are visually sensitive. These are rods and cones. Each of these rods and cones are connected to a nerve, okay? Are connected to a sensory neuron that is part of a nerve. So here's a sensory neuron coming from that cell. Here's a sensory neuron coming from that cell. Here's one coming from that cell. So each of those cells is connected to a sensory neuron. And all of those sensory neurons combined together are forming this nerve. And that is called the optic nerve. So you'll have the nerve coming from this side, have the nerve coming from this side, and then together it becomes the optic nerve and goes down into the brain. So the nerve that carries visual impulses from retina to the CNS is called the optic nerve, okay? The optic nerve. Also, going back to the retina, there's a spot on the retina that has the most amounts of rods and cones. Okay? There's a spot on the retina that is quite special because it's most light sensitive. It has the most amount of rods and cones. And that is called a fovea. Over here, they've drawn a fovea in this diagram. So that's a fovea. Also called the macula. The fovea, or the macula, is the place where you have the most amount of rods and cones. So the best vision you would be able to have if you can focus light perfectly onto the fovea. Also, if we notice at the site of the optic nerve formation that there's no retina here, right? There's no retina layer here. So because there's no retina here, this part is not sensitive to light, okay? This part is not sensitive to light, where the optic nerve emerges from. And this is called the blind spot of the eye. Why is it called the blind spot? Because that is the place where the optic nerve emerges and goes to the CNS, and it does not contain any rods and cones. Okay, the retina is absent here. So that is called the blind spot. The origin of optic nerve is called the blind spot of the eye. By the way, the very thick outer layer, the white part of the eye, right? Whenever you see someone's eyes, there's a white part on top of the colored part. The white part is called the sclera. The sclera does not have a very special function. Really what the sclera does is that it performs a mechanical barrier. So it's a strong and rigid layer that prevents the eye from damage. Okay? So let's have a look. The optic nerve, it transmits visual information from the retina to the brain. The blind spot, where the optic nerve leaves the eye, this part does not contain any rods or cones. Sclera, it is the white outer layer that provides structure and protection to the eye. Vitreous humor. Now, vitreous humor is not technically directly tested in AQA GCSEs. It is mentioned in EdXL GCSEs, but for AQA, you don't need to know much about this. However, essentially what it is that it's the gel-like substance that helps maintain the eye's shape. So all of this here, let me show you. All of this here is vitreous humor, okay? This entire thing is vitreous humor. This is a gel-like substance that allows light to go through it, land on the retina, and essentially it supports the integrity, the shape of the eye. The fovea, or the macula, is the central part of the retina that is responsible for sharp, detailed central vision, okay? Because fovea contains the highest concentration of both rods and cones. Suspensory ligaments, we've already discussed, they help transmit the tension from the ciliary muscles onto the lens, allowing it to change shape. The ciliary muscles are muscles that control the shape of the lens for focusing on near and distant objects. Now, when they contract, remember, then they move inwards, okay? Very special kind of muscles. When they contract, they move inwards, relaxing tension on the lens. And when they relax, then they move outwards, increasing tension on the lens and in the suspensory ligaments, okay? All right, so here's a quiz for you guys, and I would like for you guys to please Tell me the answer in the comments. I want to see how you are progressing, okay? And please mention your nicknames. So number 1, guess which neurons are present in the optic nerve. So which neurons is it? Is it relay neurons? Is it sensory neurons? Is it motor neurons? Number 2, label 1, 2, 3, 4 and answer me in the comments. Okay? So see if you can label these from the front of the eye, because that's the question there, right? Now it's difficult because we haven't really looked at the front of the eye. Okay, so how do iris muscles help dilate and constrict the eye? Remember, the iris muscles contain 2 kinds of muscles: circular muscles and radial muscles. The circular muscles, as you can see here, when they contract, then the pupil is going to constrict. So when the circular muscles contract, the pupil constricts, and that is when the radial muscles are relaxing. But when the radial muscles contract, then they're going to pull the pupil outwards, right? These are radial muscles. When they contract, they're going to dilate the pupil. So when radial muscles contract, they're going to dilate the pupil, increasing light that is entering into the eye. The circular muscles, they help constrict the pupil, decreasing the amount of light entering the eye. So when you're present in dim light, then the radial muscles are going to contract, and circular muscles are going to relax, causing the pupil to dilate. When you're under bright light, for example out in the sun, circular muscles contract and radial muscles relax, causing the pupil to constrict. Okay? And this reduces the amount of light entering the eye. And here's a meme. So the pupil of your eye can expand as much as 55% while looking at something you love. And so this is you guys right now, GCSE students watching my lectures. See the dilated pupil there? See what I did there? It's 100% dilated, not just 55%. This is a meme. This is probably a problem there in a person. Okay, that's not normal. So anyways, accommodation. Do you remember what accommodation is? Accommodation is to be able to focus light sharply onto the retina by the lens for different objects at different lengths. So how does this work? This is quite easy actually. So the way this works is that you have the retina. So here, let's say this is the retina, right? So here's the retina, and this is where we want to focus the light, right? So now in front of the retina, or in the beginning part of the eye, you have the lens, and lens is able to refract the light onto the retina. So let's say there's an object that is very far away from the lens, right over here, all the way here. So the light rays that are coming from this object are going to be relatively parallel, okay? Relatively parallel. So when they land onto this lens, the lens has a little bit of refractive power, right? And it will start focusing the light rays onto the retina by bending them just a little bit. And now we get a sharply focused image here. But what if I put an object that is very close to the retina, right? So here's an object that is very close to the retina. This time, the light rays coming from this object are going to be at a wider angle. So because these are wider angle, the problem here is that the refractive power of the lens is not sufficient enough to be able to refract it sharply onto the retina. So what will happen is that it does cause some refraction, but it does not focus the light rays onto the retina. The solution to this is by the ciliary muscles and the suspensory ligaments. What the ciliary muscles will do is that they will start contracting. Okay, so when the ciliary muscles contract, they're going to move inwards. When they move inwards, the tension in the suspensory ligaments will decrease. This will cause the lens to become more ball-like. Okay, become more ball-like, change its shape. Increase in thickness. So when the lens increases its thickness, it becomes a converging lens with a greater refractive power to converge the rays inwards. So now, as a result, the light rays will go ahead and be refracted just a little bit more and be focused onto the retina sharply. Okay? That is accommodating for near vision, because you've just gone from a far away object to a near object. Vice versa will also be true. So vice versa will be that you go from looking at a near object to a faraway object. In that case, and let's just draw this in green, what will happen is, or what you'll start with, is that you have a lens that is very thick, right? You have a lens that is very thick, it has a greater refractive power. So when you start focusing on a faraway object, then it's going to cause the ciliary muscles to relax. This will increase the tension on the suspensory ligaments, increasing the flatness of the lens, right? And decreasing the refractive power of the lens so that the light rays are focused correctly onto the retina. Okay? So that is far sight accommodation. So let's read this in your need notes. So again, near vision is when you're trying to look at a near object and the ciliary muscles will contract. When the ciliary muscles contract, they move inwards. Suspensory ligaments will loosen, they will decrease the tension, causing the lens to become thicker. And this will mean that there is a greater refraction, which causes the light rays to bend more to be able to be focused onto the retina. If you're looking at a faraway object for distant vision, the ciliary muscles will relax, the suspensory ligaments will tighten, causing the lens to become thinner and flatter to focus on distant objects, okay? Because you want to decrease the tension there. Now here's the thing. Some people have vision disorders or lens disorders in which their lens is not able to focus the light perfectly onto the retina. So sometimes lens can be out of focus. Either it focuses too much, and that is called short-sightedness, myopia, or focuses too less, long-sightedness, hyperopia. It can be corrected using an external lens placed in glasses or as contact lenses. So how does this work? Well, let's have a look at myopia. So myopia is short-sightedness, which means that you're able to see only objects that are close to you, but not the ones that are far away from you. So here's the retina again. This is the retina. And then here is the lens, which is quite thick, okay? And it is able to, okay, show this object perfectly fine. Because when light rays come from this object, it has enough refractive power to be able to bend the light inwards and focus it sharply onto the retina. But if you place an object that is very far away from the lens, then the light rays that are coming from this object are going to be relatively at a lesser angle. And so because these are at a lesser angle, the same refractive power is going to refract these light rays much more than needed. And so for a faraway object, the light rays are not being focused perfectly onto the retina. How do we correct this? The way to correct this will be to place a lens outside the eye that is able to diverge the rays that are coming from faraway objects. So maybe I can put a diverging lens here, a concave lens here, outside the eye that is able to diverge any ray that is coming in. So here I put a diverging lens. Again, if you don't know what a concave lens is, a diverging lens is, you can book a lesson with us and we'll try to explain that part of GCSE physics. So in this case, a diverging lens is placed. This causes the light rays to diverge a little bit. As they diverge a little bit, now when the lens is going to try to refract them, then it's able to perfectly refract them onto the retina. Okay? So that is the solution there for myopia. So again, myopia is nearsightedness. You're only able to see near objects, but not faraway objects. To correct myopia, to correct nearsightedness, you use a concave lens, a diverging lens. This is a diverging, also called a concave lens. And the reason why it's called a concave lens is because, and you can remember this, is because it's got a cave on both sides, right? It's got an indentation, cave on each side, kind of like a cave. So concave lens is a diverging lens. The opposite or vice versa will be there for hyperopia. Hyperopia is farsightedness. In that case, the lens is not thick enough the lens does not have enough refractive power to be able to bend the light coming from near objects, but is able to bend the light from faraway objects. So the way that would pan out is that you have the retina here. So here's the retina. And then here's a lens, but this is a flat lens. Okay? And so when the object is far away, no problems there. It is able to perfectly refract it just a little bit and focus the light onto the retina. But if you put an object near, right, then what happens is that the light rays that are coming from this object are going to be at a wider angle. So now when it tries to focus onto the retina, it's not able to do so perfectly. And so we get a blurry image. The solution to this is that you put a lens in front of the eye that is able to cause additional help in bending, okay? Additional help in refraction inwards. So in this case, we will be using a converging lens, an extra converging lens outside. So now, when the rays strike the outside lens, it converges them a little bit more, okay? Converges them just a little bit more. And now, the eye's own lens is able to focus it onto the retina perfectly. So this condition is called hyperopia, long-sightedness, and it is corrected by using a converging lens outside the eye. This converging lens can be placed either in glasses or it can be present in contact lenses. And yeah, so let's have a look. Myopia, which is short-sightedness, its correction is that you use a diverging lens, a concave lens, that is used to spread out the light rays before it strikes the lens, moving the focal point back onto the retina for clear distant vision. Hyperopia, hyper is high, so kind of make the link there with long-sightedness, hyper long-sightedness. Correction. Converging lens or convex lens are used to bend light rays inwards before it strikes the lens, moving the focal point forward onto the retina for clear near vision. Okay? Some other solutions is contact lenses and laser eye surgery. Lasers are used to change curve and therefore refraction of the cornea. Okay, so lasers will be essentially focused onto the retina. Now this is a low yield thing. I've never seen a question on this, but it is something that an educated person should be aware of. There's also lens replacement surgery. And that's it for this chapter. So that finishes the entirety of the nervous system and the human eye. The next chapter in this series will focus on the hormones. So thank you so much for watching, and like and subscribe. And if you're looking to book any lessons, just give us a text on the WhatsApp link provided below. You can also purchase these notes, and I recommend purchasing these notes so that you can annotate, make the diagrams, and all the drawings that I make, you can make with me, okay? Alright, I'll see you guys in the next one.